For my cultural plunge experience, I went to a mega church, Crossroads. It's in Eastgate. It's in Ohio. Previous to going to Crossroads, I never really went to church as much as I should. My experience with church when I did go was a Lutheran church. Um, you know, glass pane windows with crosses and Jesus everywhere. The opening ceremony where the there are two kids that walk down the aisle holding special staffs, and then the pastor walking behind them. And um, before going to Crossroads, I never really thought about going to a megachurch. I never thought about experiencing what it would be like to go there. And my grandparents, who are the ones who took me to the Lutheran church, kind of looked at those people as a little, out there because they um, go to a huge church. I mean, their church holds, less than 100 people, and a mega church can hold over 5,000, which to my family is unheard of. And so I never thought about going because to me, that was like a crazy out there thing. And if I wanted to go to church, I needed to go to a small church where I know everybody and I can say hello to everyone. Um, when I first got to Crossroads, I mean, it was a huge parking lot. The parking lot is shared with Jungle Gyms, so it just looks huge. There's multiple rows of parking. It was somewhat overwhelming, and all of them were full. I had to park all the way at the end and walk over. But when I got to the door, there were people greeting and opening doors for everybody, welcoming them in and making everybody feel welcome and loved. And then when I walked through the door initially, it didn't feel like a church. It almost looked like the entrance to a mall. I mean, there were TV screens everywhere. There was a large jumbotron with couches in front of it in case you didn't want to go into the auditorium. There were countless coffee stations that they offered coffee for free. There were kids stations off to the sides, and just this place I can't even go to explain how large just the opening uh, welcome way was. I mean, you could easily fit all 5,000 people from the auditorium in this welcome area and still have room. It almost felt like I was getting ready to go to a Super Bowl party because I was going to go sit at the couch next to the big jumbotron. It was incredible just to look at the engineering and artwork that they had everywhere, but nothing was really straightforward. Christ, this, there were a lot of crossroads posted, like the name, but there weren't any things, specific to make you think you were in a church. In fact, like I said, I thought I was in a mall. But then when you walk past the welcome area, you go into this auditorium. This auditorium is two stages or two floors. There are tons of seatings on both sides, and it opens up to a very large stage. The stage is huge. They have a whole band set up in there. It almost looks like you're about to attend a rock concert at Fifth Third Bank Arena. That's how big it was. So I was blown away by the mere size of the auditorium and the welcome center. I mean, everything was huge. And then the band started to play. And now, because of my Lutheran background, the closest thing I had to Christian music was a not a bagpipe, a an organ playing. and the singing was done by the people and the pastor. And when the band started playing, it was just the band. I mean, people were singing, but that's if they wanted to. But it seemed like pretty much original songs, and some of them were, Christian rock songs. But it really did feel like a rock concert. I mean, there were people dancing and people praising, and but they were praising in a manner that almost looked like they were dancing at a rock concert. I mean, it was incredibly different from what I was used to, because at the Lutheran church, the pastor starts off singing, and then everybody chimes in, and then at the end you say a prayer. And at the end of all these songs, a pastor just started talking. So for the first song that they sang, I was moved by it. It was a good song. Can't remember the lyrics fully, but it was a nice, um, slow, but still had um, that bit that wanted me to kind of tap my foot a little bit, and I was not expecting that at all. But then when the song was over, the first pastor came out. He was the junior pastor, who talks about the upcoming events and ways to volunteer and things like that. And just the way he spoke was completely different. I mean, I'm pretty sure I heard him say 3 cuss words, um, and to me that was uh, just so out there. It made me feel very comfortable there, because I don't like to admit that I use foul language very often, but it did. It gave them a level of relatability, uh, and and he was talking about volunteering and how anything could help, and then he started talking about why volunteer, and he showed videos of people who had volunteered, and they showed their experience, and um, it was interesting to see their reaction to it and how they felt after volunteering, and not just volunteering, but volunteering happily. um, and that to me was just crazy, because in a Lutheran church you volunteer, but you don't openly make a video about how interesting and how perfect it was. But it was nice to see their interaction, and what they gained from it. Then after he got done talking about all of the upcoming events, and the testimonials and whatnot, then the band played 2 more songs. Uh, each song just as exciting as the first. I found myself tapping my foot to it, and cracking a smile, because it really was uh, a good song, good uplifting songs. And they weren't short songs either. They were full 3-minute songs, that is completely different from the Lutheran church, where you might sing a 3-verse, 4-verse, 5-verse, whatever song, as opposed to a 3-minute song. And in a Lutheran church, every time you sing a song, the pastor tells you to stand up, and then after the song you sit down, he preaches, then you stand up, you sit down, he preaches, you stand up, you sing. But in this, there was freedom. You didn't have to sit, you didn't have to stand. You could do whatever you wanted to do, with the freedom of your ability. And that was interesting to me, because I was waiting for the pastor to say, "All right, everybody, please rise," um, and he never did. But then after the 2 songs in the middle, the main pastor came on, and the main pastor was on a video screen. I assume he is streaming to more than one church. I'm not 100% sure on that, but he was on a video screen. So that was interesting to me. Um, One, because he was in plain clothes, and I mean, a pastor that I'm used to is wearing the white robe with the cross and sun around his neck, and then secondly, he was on a screen. The pastors that I've seen before are right in person, and sometimes they even go up onto the little pedestal and kind of preach down to you. This still kind of felt like he was preaching down because you had to look up to the screen, but it definitely felt more um, connected, even though it was on a video, because he did talk in plain language and tried to veer away from harder words that some people might not understand from the Bible. And so after putting him on the Jumbotron, I felt an incredible sense of connection. And then the other thing that they do, so when the pastor first started, he opened with communion. And now, communion with my church, you all walk to the center out of your pew, and you go up and you get a cup, and you drink, you eat the body of Christ, and then you drink the blood of Christ. In Crossroads, they give you a self-serve cup, like if you were looking at a yogurt cup, and you peel the first layer back, and that releases the body of Christ. And then you peel the second layer back afterwards, and it has the juice or the blood of Christ. And that was weird. I didn't do it because it was really interesting to me. It's a great concept because they have so many people, they can't release them all into the center of the aisle and then have them all go back. It would be chaos, but it felt weird to me that they were doing this, and it felt so abnormal. But then after the communion, there was a prayer, and the pastor started his sermon. And during his sermon, he was a great speaker. It was great listening to him, and I even felt that it related directly to my life situation at that time. And then he started showing emails and testimonials that related to his sermon, and it talked about people answering to God, and how two people could answer to God and solve a problem. And it really touched me to the point that I couldn't help myself but to be in tears because the story was so moving. I wouldn't even call it sadness. It was so powerful. The power of the story just got to me, and it was like one of those when you're watching a sad movie, at the end when it's so happy that you can't help but shed that one little tear and try to push it back. It was a very moving story. And then after the story, he closed with another prayer, and then the auditorium was released. Now, when the auditorium was released, you would think it would be chaos because there's 2,000 plus people there on this particular day that I went. But it was fairly orderly, and you'd see some people standing in the aisles talking about the service and how they think everything went, how they were doing, things like that. But I got to talking to somebody and talked about how moving the story was, and he said that God works in mysterious ways, and you never know when He's going to work, and that really struck me because the story itself got to me, and then he's affirming it, and I never really thought like that before. But then after, when I was walking out of the auditorium, just like when I entered the welcome area, there are people. They open the door and they say hello, goodbye, things like that. Just very pleasant and very opening and welcome to new people, old people, you know, any kind of people. There's no sort of prejudice that I could see. I mean, they let everyone in, and they appear to love everyone the same. And this level of just acceptance was amazing to me, because in smaller churches it takes quite a bit to get in, and for my church I was in because of my relatives, and so it was just so interesting to see how many people were open and accepted into getting into the church. And then again, I walked through the very large welcome center and was still blown away just by how the size of it and the way it looked. And then there were people saying goodbye outside of the door again. They, have a nice day, be safe, drive safe home, drive home safe. And it was just such an open experience, such a good experience. I really, really enjoyed it. In fact, they needed help for Easter Sunday, and I saw that the opportunity to help, so I figured I would. And I don't know that without this cultural plunge experience, I would have done that. I don't even know that I would have stepped into Crossroads, because, like I said before, it was definitely outside my norm. But now I think I'm more open to going to a church like that. I think the welcomeness and the fact that you can meet so many people in just one area for 1 to 2 hours is amazing to me. And I really, when I walked out of there, I really felt good. I felt like I had a great time. I felt like I had a good experience. And even driving home, I couldn't get the smile off my face. And I called my dad later and explained and told him the story word for word, because I remembered it. Uh, and still broke a tear, because the story was so moving that it still sticks to me now. It's a very good story. Um, and I just can't imagine not doing this, because this experiment helped me to experience something so far outside my comfort zone, but it also helped me realize that even though something might be outside of your comfort zone, even though you might think it is, it's not as far outside as you think it is. And try to experience new things. Release your prejudice on a mega church. Release your prejudice on any church. Release your prejudice on people. Because when we do that, we accept each other more. And when we accept each other more, we can live better in peace and harmony. And that's the goal for the world. And even if we can't achieve that, as a teacher, I will definitely not look at my students and the experiences they have and downplay them, because I haven't experienced it. So how can I make a judgment call based on their experience? So this experience was very eye-opening for me. It was very good. Maybe I'll start experiencing more things in the future.